Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday. My name is Kelly Baltzell, and I'm the CEO and owner of Beyond Indigo Pets. Since it is a Wednesday, that means we have Dr. Jess Trimble here today, and which is lovely. Always love your energy on our show, so thank you for coming.
Absolutely. It's always fun.
It's always fun. It's always a good highlight point of the day. So we were talking, that it's almost August here, and we're getting close to that. But you have, information for us, even though it's getting to August and we're, I don't know, how many months into this? March, April, May, June, July, 5 months already.
Which have simultaneously flown and just utterly dragged. I'm not sure which it really has been.
It's awful, right? Like we're in this weird time more situation. But also like August in the past has been kind of the time off in the veterinary industry that I've noticed. People get on the last vacations or they're gearing up to get their kids to college or, like August just seems to be this kind of pause month. Well, everybody kind of does their thing and then Labor Day hits and everybody kind of snaps back, and then we're back into business mode again and what life's going to do. So it'll be interesting to see in these times what that reality looks like for us after Labor Day, because right now the big question for a lot of people who are parents is what about school? How do we deal with school? And then what does that mean for work? And then how do I interface with my patients? And, all that just screams, and then we're still doing telehealth and we're still doing Zoom meetings and we're still, there's all of these things. So I'm interested to see what you have for us today because the soup mix is still being stirred. Soup mix? Yep. Soup pot is still being stirred with all these dynamics and variables. So what do you have for us today?
Well, some stuff that actually, I guess, is pretty pertinent as we're talking about all of these huge changes in our personal life too, or at least that will be for the tip of the day. But on our news of the day, I found a cool article about optimizing tech that is already in your practice. And this sort of relates to a great conversation I had yesterday with someone who is the CEO of one of the really common veterinary telehealth platforms. And we got to talking about change management and tech optimization because what all these telehealth companies saw was in March, they all panicked and went, oh my gosh, I need to have telehealth now. They jumped on these free trials. They did it for a month. When the time came around for the billing to end the next month, they dropped it without really looking at the return on investment or their client experience or how it affected their hospital at all. And so we got into this discussion about how do you help veterinary hospitals who are willing to bring the tech in, how do you help them optimize it and really figure out how to make it a living, breathing part of the business? Because it can be difficult and it has to be incredibly intentional. It's not going to just happen on its own. So this article, obviously from the human side, took some telehealth experts from the 4 biggest telemedicine providers, and they talked about how to optimize the tech that you have in your hospital in that moment. And what they really talked about is some of the same stuff that we go over week after week after week, but it's choosing mostly a platform that can grow with your clinic and change with your clinic. Because this all goes back to, we know what today looks like, we kind of know what tomorrow looks like, but who knows what our world is going to look like in 4 months and again in a year and in 4 years. So you have to ensure that you're picking tech that's going to grow with you and change as the world changes. So finding tech that can be scalable across use cases and workflows. This means not choosing tech that is only applicable for a surgical recheck, right? We want tech that's going to work for new patients as well as maybe telehealth for people who aren't even your patients. And maybe, to be able to talk to consultants as well as your patients. And so you've really got to think about the scalability for use cases and ensure that you're covering everything that your hospital can possibly see. And that plays into the next point of adaptability, making sure what you use is adaptable, And that can involve having a conversation with your telehealth provider to make sure that they are intent on building new features and improving their product and getting your feedback as a user. It's super important. But they talked a lot about integration. There's a lot of platforms out there that integrate with everything under the sun. There's some that don't integrate with anything. Their point in this article was that integration makes a better user experience and a more efficient user experience for both the client as well as the healthcare team. And it's going to be much easier to keep sort of the enthusiasm up if all of that integration is already happening and there's not the manual administrative work on the back end. And so this sort of plays then into the next 2 points of investing in the patient experience and not forgetting that the human touch is still really important, because when you start to deliver everything on a digital platform, we all sort of yearn still for that human touch, right? Like we get total Zoom exhaustion because we don't like seeing things through a screen all the time. So remember that finding ways to still provide humanity through all this is going to be critical, both for your healthcare team's mental well-being as well as your client's engagement. So this sort of plays into the next one for the tip of the day of change management and how critical it is then to the success of a new technology initiative in your practice. And I wanted to bring up something that I find fascinating, which is called MarTech's Law, which is basically considered the greatest management challenge of the 21st century. So if you look at this little curve here, you can see an exponential growth curve. MarTech's Law is the combination of that exponential growth curve, which is all of the tech in our world growing faster and faster and faster and faster, versus a logarithmic growth, which is just linear. It's us, it's humans. We don't think on an exponential scale. We think one step in front of the other. And so we as organizations and businesses are trying to grow by putting one step in front of the other. But all of the technology around us is, rather than going, 2 + 1 is 3 and 3 + 1 is 4, they're going from 2 to 4 to 16 to 32 to 60, right? They're growing so much faster. And that creates a really big divide. And when all of the change is way up here and we as humans are still down here, that management of the division becomes really scary and very intimidating. And so this is a management challenge that we have to figure out how to tackle in our own practices, knowing that the technology that we're using as doctors is going to accelerate so much more quickly than we as humans can really comprehend or understand. And so there's some great change management articles out there. I'm not going to go into all the bits and pieces, but really understanding how to instill change management into your practice is going to make or break your practice in terms of whether or not you're going to be able to bring in new initiatives and new technologies. So it's a lot going back behind, don't rush things, make communication a big priority, get your whole team involved, be very transparent. But a lot of this goes behind the why, right? You can't just put in a new technology and tell your team to use it. You have to teach them why it's important, why it's going to improve the patient outcomes, why it's going to improve their own life, and really get them to internalize that mission. And then that change will be so much easier. So I won't go into all the details of change management, but I would really encourage you as a hospital to get your whole team to embrace it, because this is what's going to help you in the long run to continue to survive in such a totally crazy environment that we have right now.
Okay. While you were saying that, I was thinking about some things. All that exponential curve of technology, it's a very real thing, right? Because I've lived that. I've been doing internet since 1995. And you see that because it's building a library of code that you can build off of. It's like building the foundation of a house. You can't build the second floor until the first floor is built. You can't build the first floor until the foundation's built. And it is an exponential thing because as millions of people are writing code, it just builds this library, right? That just Okay, so we got that, but that's also what we see in marketing, right? On digital marketing, and why people get overwhelmed. Because when Facebook was new, it was easy. When Google came out in 1998, it was easy. When Pinterest came out, easy, right? When Google My Business started, easy. Reviews, all of these things. When they were baby, nanotechnology, just, and not as nanotech, but as in baby tech, just brand new. They're easy to manage, and people think, oh, that's fun and it's easy and it's okay. And then it grows up exponentially, right, to what you have today. And then that's where people get really overwhelmed. So you not only have the marketing world of all these platforms that are exponentially changing on a daily basis, but like you're right, inside the hospital, all the pieces of tech that you have are exponentially increasing as well. Every single thing, right, that you can do with technology. And I'm assuming since you graduated veterinary school to today, you can probably think of some technology that you used then that is now that is vastly different or more robust. And right?
Yep.
And my question is with all of this, like in a lot of businesses, we have CIOs, chief information officers, who just look at the technology, who just manage that within a business. Is that where we're going with veterinary hospitals? I mean, we have practice managers, right? And they are an amazing addition to a veterinary hospital because there's so many moving parts. But what about the technology? What is that going to emerge, or is there a person there who will be certified in managing the tech? I don't know. I'm just throwing the question out.
It's an interesting thought, because certainly as this accelerates, it is really too much for a single person to handle. And it's interesting, you mentioned, from veterinary school to now. I remember in veterinary school sitting in the basement because that's where all of radiology lived. And there was an ultrasound machine that was as big as my desk sitting here. And I remember them telling me, don't you dare drop that probe, because that is a crystal in it. And that probe costs about $15,000. And that whole machine costs probably like $30,000 to $40,000. This year, a ultrasound probe that connects to your iPhone is now available that provides better imaging for $2,000. So, that is what we're looking at, a price drop of $40,000, and now it fits in my pocket versus as big as my desk. And we're going to see that with everything here very soon.
And, you use it on a device this big.
Yep.
Right? And it's portable and it's maneuverable. Then how does that talk to your PIM? Right? And then what other technology does it interface with? And how do you do that on telehealth? And can you send that device home to somebody? Like if it gets really bad, right? Can a huge pet owner do that and just wand the belly and send the images? I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities that come up, right? But that also really changes the way the practice then does work, right? Like if you have some technology that can be done at home or with a wearable device, then what does that do for the flow in the practice in managing the case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now all of a sudden you've got parts of your team that can work remotely from home and help these patients that have their ultrasound at home and their wearable device at home. It's going to completely change how we practice for the better, I really think.
Absolutely. Yeah, too, but
it's going to be hard for a while
in between. And every individual manages change differently. That's a personal path that everybody walks, right? So some people adapt to change better and they're early adapters, and some people are late adapters. But we all just, there's no right or wrong. It's just you have to be aware of your own adaptation rate and your comfort level, and keep that in mind as you're working on technology in the practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, fascinating. Well, that's cool. That'll give me some thoughts today, because you just take it for granted when some new thing comes out and you're like, okay, but then the aggregate is very mind-boggling, boggling. I mean, so we'll see. So speaking of animals and treatments, you have some adorable kitties.
Yes. So thankfully, they are just the snuggliest, most ridiculous things. So as we're talking about sort of our self happiness, what we do to make things wonderful in our lives, these are two of my critters that I figured I would share. So every morning, I sit in a hammock on our patio, our little sunroom, and I read for an hour while I drink my coffee. And every morning, those two jump in the hammock with me and take a nap. So Steve and Velo, they're both cats that came to me through various veterinary, Steve, we could see through his leg when he was just a little half-dead kitten, and Velo came off the streets with one infected eye. They were both a mess, but they're happy boys now. But Steve recently has discovered a love for green beans. I picked an entire bowl of green beans and I left them on the table overnight, and he got on the table, knocked them all off, and use them as toys. And now he is so desperate that every time I go outside and come back with green beans, he just sits there and screams at me until I give him one to play with. And he fetches green beans all day. It's ridiculous.
Oh my God, that is so cute. I'm going to still use some pictures of mine, but I have a funny feline story that when I first moved into this house, I planted raspberry bushes. And I was so excited because I was picking one of my first batches of raspberries. And I was picking them and I was in the sun and I put them in a bowl. And then I realized, wait a minute, there's something wrong. And I looked down and the bowl was almost empty. And there was my neighbor's cat sitting right there and just eating the raspberries. And his little face was just so cute. And he was so red. And I'm like, well, now I'm not going to eat it with cat slobber. And it's not even my cat. So, I'm like, you enjoy them, because he was totally like thinking but he was so quiet. I didn't even hear him come up. And he was snagging them out and just thought, wow, thank you, human, for plucking these in a nice container bowl for me so that I could eat them all at once and I don't have to work about reaching up and grabbing the raspberries myself. But
typical cat, we are here to serve them.
Right? I mean, that is the way it's supposed to go. But along the cuteness factor, I saw something totally adorable this week that I didn't realize was so gosh darn adorable. And I haven't told you this ahead of time, so this picture's new for you. Baby melons have baby fuzz on them. And I've never grown melons, so I didn't know they were gosh darn so dang adorable. So they have little baby fur on them, and then as they get older, they get bigger, and I just never knew they were so cute. So there you go.
Oh, I'm jealous. My watermelon vine has not put out any melons yet. I'm getting only little male flowers. I haven't had the females.
Well, these are cantaloupe, I think.
Yeah.
Who knows? I just put them out because they're adorable, and I wanted a vine there. But this is so awesome. Well, thank you.
My pleasure, as always.
Until later.
I'll see you next week.
Bye.